Well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the God Honest Truth live stream. And tonight we're going to be talking about, well, it's a subject that most people, or at least most Americans, and it's really spreading out across the world, but it's something that most everybody has heard about and a lot of people love and enjoy every single year. This is the subject of Santa Claus, and we're going to be discussing all about the origin, the history, the development, the evolution, if you might say, of this beloved figure that is brought up at the end of every year. And that's going to be the subject of tonight's teaching or drash. And there's a lot that goes into it, and it's intense. So be ready for that, because it's all coming up right after we get done with the regular service items. Now, before we get to tonight's drash we're teaching on Santa Claus, let's go ahead, or we're going to be first doing our liturgy, our Torah portion, our Haftorah portion, and our Brit Hadashah portion, like always. Now, if you're just joining us for the first time, we are God Honest Truth, and we are a messianic ministry that is based out of Western North Carolina. To find out more about us, you can go to our website at www.godhonesttruth.com, and there you can find our social media links to our video and audio podcasting. You can find audio teachings, article teachings, resources to help you in your learning of Hebrew and Greek, audio Bibles, and so much more. So go check it out today at www.godhonesttruth.com. So now, without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive right into our liturgy. Od balevav panimam nefesh Yehudi homiya ufate misrag kadimam ayin lezion Sophia od lo avdam tikvatenu Atikva bashnot alpaim lahiotam kofshi behartenu Eretz Zion v'Yerushalayim lahiotam kofshi behartenu Eretz Zion v'Yerushalayim. Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod, Malhuto, Leolam Wahed. Hear, O Israel, Yahweh is our God, Yahweh is one. Blessed be his name, whose glorious kingdom is for eternity. And you shall love Yahweh your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And have these words which I command you this day be upon your heart. And you shall teach them diligently to your children, and speak of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and let them be frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them on the doorpost of your house and upon your gates. In the way of announcements this week, we just want to once again, like always, remind everyone to keep the nation of Israel in your prayers, all those living within the borders of Israel, and especially those who are serving in the Israeli Defense Forces. So, like always, make sure to keep them in your prayers. Tonight's drash, or on your screen right here, is the list of upcoming episodes for about the next 2 months or so. Tonight's drash, like we said earlier, is all about Santa Claus, the origin, the history, the evolution even. some might say, of the figure that lots and lots of people around the world love and think about every single year. So that is tonight's Drosh. And tomorrow, I'm sorry, not tomorrow, but next week's Drosh is going to be on the date of December 25th. We're going to get into a whole bunch of calendar issues next week when we start looking at December 25th and why that was chosen for the date of Messiah's birth. But we'll leave it there. We won't get into too much this week. Make sure to tune in next week for that Drosh, and also every week on Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for each of these upcoming Droshes. And here's your list of upcoming Moedim and feast days for about the next year or so. Our next upcoming feast day is going to be Hanukkah, and that starts on December 14th at sunset and runs through December 22nd at sunset. If you'd like to know more about what Hanukkah is, where it comes from, how to celebrate it, why we celebrate it, or why some people celebrate it, the various symbols and food and customs and all that good stuff, make sure to tune in about 2 weeks or so before the actual feast day occurs, and we'll have a dedicated episode all to that particular feast day. And in this case, it's going to be dedicated all to Hanukkah. And I'll give you plenty of time to learn about it, do a little bit of studying on it, and get ready for that feast day. So make sure to be ready for that, because it's going to be coming up very soon. And if you have any prayer requests or announcements that you would like to have announced live on air, make sure to have those in to us by Thursday evening at the latest, because we do go live on Friday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And now, if you would, please join us for a moment of prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for bringing us together as brothers and sisters in Messiah to worship your holy name. We ask that you be with the nation of Israel. We lift them up to your remembrance, to your protection, to your guidance. We know that this entire Middle East over there is just a hotbed of turmoil and has been for thousands of years. And we just ask that you be with everyone that is inside the borders of your promised land that you gave to the Hebrews, Father. We ask that you give them a sense of guidance and protection and hope for the future. And we ask that you be with all those who are serving in the Israeli Defense Forces, Father, that you would guide them and protect them, and just put a shield of protection around them, Father, as they fight to protect just their very right to exist from those who would do them harm, from the Islamic extremists, Father, all around them. We ask that you be with them and guide them and protect them always, and let them know that you are with them. We ask that you be with us so that we may learn what you would have us to learn from your word, and that you would be with us as we go through this next week, so that we may bring glory and honor to your name. For all this we ask in your holy and heavenly name. Amen. And now, back to our liturgy. Blessed are you, O Yahweh our God, who has given us the way of salvation in Messiah Yeshua. He walked among us, filled with your Spirit. The only one who ever perfectly fulfilled your Torah, he healed the sick and raised the dead. The multitudes of our people sought his touch. He taught as no man taught. With authority he brought forth the treasures of the Torah. How the children sought him. The lepers he touched and made clean. How the despised and outcast found love and release from their sin. How the hypocrites feared him, whose words uncovered their sin. Despised and rejected, acquainted with grief, he bore the sins of Israel. All we, like sheep, have gone astray, turned every one to his own way. Our iniquities were laid upon the king, the sins of the world, his burden to bear. He rose from the dead and opened the way to life everlasting. Praise his name. We are in him. His spirit empowers. New life is ours with joy and peace. Blessed are you, O Yahweh our God, who has given us Messiah our King. For the sake of our Master Yeshua and his merit and virtues, may the sayings of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be favorable before you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Amen. Avinu Shebashamayim Yikadesh Shemcha. Tavo Mahutecha Ye'asa Retzonecha. Ba'aretz Ka'asher Na'asa Vashemayim. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Let thy kingdom come, let thy will be done, as on earth, so as in heaven. Ten lanu hayom, lechem hukenu. Usalach lanu, et ashmatenu ka asher. So lechim anachnu, la asher ashmulanu. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Ve'al tevienu lidei masa, ki'im hatzilenu min hara. Hilaha, hamamlacha, wahagavora, wahatifaret, le'olame, olamim. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. None can compare to you, O Yahweh, and nothing compares to your creation. Your kingdom is an everlasting kingdom. Your mercy endures throughout all generations. Yahweh is king. Yahweh was king. Yahweh shall be king throughout all time. May Yahweh grant his people mercy. May Yahweh bless his people with peace. Proclaim Yahweh's greatness with me. Let us exalt him together. And it came to pass, whenever the ark went forth, Moses would say, Arise, O Yahweh, and let your enemies be scattered. May those who hate you flee from before you. For from Zion shall go forth the Torah, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Blessed be he who in holiness gave the Torah to his people Israel. All right, and tonight's Torah portion is going to be Exodus chapter 13, verses 1 through 20. And like always, we'll give you just a moment to find that in your preferred translation if you would like to read along with us at home. Exodus chapter 13, verses 1 through 20. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Set apart to me every firstborn, whatever opens the womb among the children of Israel, both of man and of beast, it is mine. And Moshe said to the people, Remember this day in which you went out of Mitzrayim, out of the house of slavery, for by strength of hand Yahweh brought you out from here. And do not eat unleavened bread. This day you are coming out, in the month of Aviv, it shall be, when Yahweh brings you into the land of the Canaanite, and the Hittite, and the Amorite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite, which he swore to your fathers to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey, that you shall keep this service in this month. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and on the seventh day there is a festival to Yahweh. Unleavened bread is eaten for 7 days, and do not let unleavened bread be seen with you, and do not let leaven be seen with you in all your border. And you shall inform your son in that day, saying, It is because of what Yahweh did for me when I came up from Mitzrayim. And it shall be as a sign on your hand, and as a reminder between your eyes, that the Yahweh's Torah may be in your mouth, for with a strong hand Yahweh has brought you out of Mitzrayim. And you shall guard this law in its season from year to year. And it shall be, when Yahweh brings you into the land of the Canaanite, as he swore to you and your fathers, and gives it to you, that you shall set apart to Yahweh all that open the womb, and every firstborn that comes from a beast which you have. The males are Yahweh's. And every firstborn of a donkey you shall ransom with a lamb, and if you do not ransom it, then you shall break its neck. And every firstborn of man among your sons you shall ransom. And it shall be, when your son ask you in time to come, saying, What is this? Then you shall say to him, By strength of hand Yahweh brought us out of Mitzrayim, out of the house of slavery. And it came to be, when Pharaoh was hard in letting us go, that Yahweh killed all the firstborn in the land of Mitzrayim. both the firstborn of man and the firstborn of beast. Therefore I am slaughtering to Yahweh all that open the womb, being males, but all the firstborn of my sons I ransom. And it shall be as a sign on your hand and as frontlets between your eyes, for by strength of hand Yahweh brought us out of Mitzrayim. And it came to be, when Pharaoh had let the people go, that Elohim did not lead them by the way of the land of the Pelishtim, though that was near. For Elohim said, lest the people regret when they see war, and they return to Mitzrayim. But Elohim led the people around by the way of the wilderness to the sea of reeds. And the children of Israel went up harnessed out of the land of Mitzrayim. And Moshe took the bones of Joseph with him, for he had certainly made the children of Israel swear, saying, Elohim will certainly visit you, and you shall bring up my bones from here with you. And they departed from Sukkot and camped in Etham at the edge of the wilderness. Baruch atah Yahweh, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah temet, v'chaye olam betukenu, Baruch atah Yahweh, noten ha-Torah. Amen. This is the Torah which Moses placed before the children of Israel. It is in accord with Yahweh's command by the hand of Moses. It is a tree of life to those who take hold of it, and those who support it are praiseworthy. Its ways are ways of pleasantness, and all its paths are peace. Bring us back, Lord, to you, and we shall come. Renew our days as of old. Et haim hi lamahazim kimba veto meheha meushar deraheha tarhenuam v'chol nativoteha shalom hashivenu Adonai Elecha ve'nashuva Hadesh Hadesh Amenu Hadesh Amenu Kekedem. Blessed are you, O Yahweh our God, King of the universe, who has chosen faithful prophets to speak words of truth. Amen. All right, and tonight's Haftarah portion is going to be Isaiah chapter 46, verses 3 through 13. And once again, we'll give you just a moment to find that in your preferred translation at home. Isaiah chapter 46, verses 3 through 13. Listen to me, O house of Jacob, and all the remnant of the house of Israel, who have been born by me from the belly, who have been carried from the womb. Even to old age I am he, and even to gray hairs I bear you. I shall sustain, and I shall bear you, and I shall lift up, and I shall deliver. To whom would you compare me, and make me equal, and compare me, that we should be alike? Those who pour out gold from the bag and weigh silver on the scale, they hire a goldsmith, and he makes it a mighty one. They fall down, they bow themselves to it. They lift it up on the shoulder, they carry it and set it in its place, and it stands. From its place it does not move. Though one cries out to it, it does not answer, nor save him from his trouble. Remember this, and show yourselves men. Bring it back to mind, you transgressors. Remember the former matters of old, for I am El, and there is no other Elohim, and no one is like me, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times things that have not been done, saying, My counsel does stand, and all my delight I do, calling a bird of prey from the east, the man of my counsel from a distant land. Indeed, I have spoken it, I shall also bring it to pass, I have purposed it, I shall also do it. Listen to me, you stubborn of heart, who are far from righteousness. I shall bring near my righteousness. It is not far off, and my deliverance is not delaying. And I shall appoint deliverance in Sion, my esteem in Yisrael. Blessed are you, O Yahweh our God, King of the universe, who has given us the living word in Messiah Yeshua. Blessed are you, O Yahweh, giver of the renewed covenant. Amen. And finally, tonight's Brit Hadashah portion is going to be Colossians chapter 1, verses 15 through 23. And one last time, we'll give you just a moment to find that in your preferred translation at home. Colossians chapter 1, verses 15 through 23. Who is the likeness of the invisible Elohim, the firstborn of all creation, because in him were created all, in the heavens and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or rulerships or principalities or authorities. All have been created through him and for him, and he is before all, and in him all hold together. And he is the head of the body, the assembly, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in all he might become the first in rank. Because in him all the completeness was pleased to dwell, and through him to reconcile all to himself, having made peace through the blood of his cross, through him, whether on earth or in the heavens. And you, who once were alienated and enemies in the mind by wicked works, yet now he has reconciled in the body of his flesh through death, to present you holy and blameless and above reproach in his sight, if indeed you continue in the belief, grounded and steadfast, and are not moved away from the expectation of the good news which you have heard, which was proclaimed to every creature under the heaven, of which I, Shaul, became a servant. Baruch atah Yahweh, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu hadavar ha'emet, v'chaye olam betukenu, Baruch atah Yahweh, noten ha'brit ha'hadashah. Blessed are you, O Yahweh our God, King of the universe, who gave to us the word of truth and planted life everlasting in our midst. Blessed are you, O Yahweh, giver of the renewed covenant. Amen. So just a moment, like always, we'll be getting to tonight's drosh, all about Santa Claus and the history and origins and evolution and all that good stuff, which is just chock full of stuff. So get ready for this. Before we do that, let me know down below, like always ask you a question right before we get to this. Down below in the comments, I want you to let me know if you support Santa Claus or if you oppose Santa Claus. And just like a quick one sentence reason as to why you do one or the other, support or oppose. It'd be interesting to find out after we get done with this teaching if your opinion has changed any. Also, if you don't have an opinion one way or the other that way, or if you just rather not answer, then you can also let me down in the comments if you think, in your opinion, that Santa Claus and St. Nicholas are the same person or the same thing. Let me know that down in the comments as well. While you're down there, or after you get done with that, make sure to go up, hit that like button, also hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so that you're notified every time that we go live or upload a new on-demand video. And also make sure to hit that share button and share this around with someone that you may know. Because odds are you're watching this right now, you enjoy this kind of content, whether it's the type of content or just the educational material, but someone in your inner circle, someone that you're friends with, connected with, they're going to enjoy that same kind of the same kind of content for the exact same reasons. So go ahead and hit that share button, share it around through email, social networking, text message, what have you. But every time you share it by word of mouth, we really, really do appreciate it. So thank you so much in advance. I'm getting tongue tied just waiting for this. I'm so excited for this particular teaching or Josh, put so much time into it, and we're about to get to it. Make sure you have your notes ready because there is a bunch of information coming at you. There's some scripture there, but as you might assume, or as you might have guessed, there's not a whole lot of scripture that goes along with telling about Santa Claus. I mean, he wasn't Mary's Lamaze partner or anything like that. So there's some scripture in there, but most of it is historical information, and there's a whole bunch of it. And unlike most of the past episodes, there is a whole bunch of images there too. So get ready for that. Anyways, let me check the live streams. And for those of you who don't know, we live stream to Rumble and YouTube every Friday night. So if one of those doesn't work for you, go check out the other one. And of course, the best way to watch is going to be through our website. And there you can click on the live stream button at the top on the navigation bar, and you can look at both the Rumble stream and the YouTube stream at the same time, if that so helps you. But that's the most convenient way. So we got multiple options, and we live stream multiple places. So go check it out whenever you get a chance. Mr. Horn, you may be onto something there. Don't jump the gun too quick. We're going to get to all that. So this teaching or drash is going to be all about Santa Claus, the origin, the evolution, the history, if you will, of that which we call Santa Claus nowadays. A lot of information coming your way. And if you are listening through an audio podcast, you're still going to get a lot of information, a lot of good, juicy educational material during this teaching. But there's also a lot of images and visuals that go along with this. So it's better this time if you watch on video, but you still get a lot of great stuff if you're listening through the audio podcast version anyways. Now, if you would like to get more information than what you receive in this particular audio teaching or video teaching, you can always go to our website at godhonesttruth.com, click on the article post for this particular episode, and there you'll be able to find the on-demand video. You'll be able to find the drosh slides that you see coming up on your screen here. You'll also be able to find the notes that we took for this particular episode and the transcript if it so helps you. It's all right there on one convenient page on godhonesttruth.com. But if you want it even easier, you can go down below in the description, and we provided a convenient link there. All you got to do is click on that link down there in the description, and that'll take you directly to the article post on our website. And that should be down there whether you're watching on a video platform or an audio podcasting platform. Now, before we get started on this particular teaching, there is some housekeeping that we need to go over real quick because this is going to be a rather intense and rather heavy sort of teaching. So if you're an adult, you're going to be probably okay as long as you're not overly sensitive. But anyways, the content that we're going to be discussing and presenting visuals of in this particular teaching may not be suitable for young viewers or children. So if they're there in your presence, you may want to have them leave so you can watch the teaching first and then decide if it's okay with them. As always, you do you and your parenting and your children, but I just want to give you a heads up and a warning ahead of time that some of this stuff, it's historical information about the evolution of Santa Claus, but not all truth, not all historical information is right and ripe for young viewers sometimes. We're going to be discussing and including in this teaching various things like information on paganism, possible racism involved with the history of Santa Claus. Just wait, it's coming. We're going to be involving American politics as well, and so much more going into this. You never thought all of that would be involved in Santa Claus, but it is. Hang on. I said I'm excited about it. Hope you are too. And also, there's going to be a lot of foreign names that's going to be presented today. And that just goes along with the history and things that go along with the history of Santa Claus and the evolution of it. So there's going to be some words there that are hard to pronounce. And I'm already going to realize that I am not that good at pronouncing various words, especially foreign words. And I'm probably going to butcher a lot of it. So I want to go ahead and apologize ahead of time for any mispronunciations that may come about during the course of this particular presentation. So starting out, let's go ahead and begin with a thought experiment. And this is something I want you to keep in mind as we go throughout this particular teaching, because I believe it's going to be important to think about this from the beginning all the way to the end, and also deciding on whether or not, deciding on what you think about the whole Santa Claus thing. This is the question I want you to think about. When is something or someone no longer what it used to be? Can something ever change into something different? Now, this is getting into the area of philosophy. I am not a philosopher. Certainly not. So if you are a philosopher on a professional level, then I'm sorry if I butcher any of this philosophical stuff. But the general viewer, I want you to think about these things. When is something or someone no longer what it used to be? And can something or even someone or the legend of someone change into something completely different that's completely not what it was to begin with? Keep all that in mind. Think about this. Here's an example that's been given over the years. Think about a ship, an old-timey wooden ship, that kind of ship, where it's made of poles and boards and nails and things like that. And let's take that ship and we replace the ship piece by piece. And we place one board on the ship. Is it a different ship? And we place another board and another board and another board until we get to the point where we have replaced every single board and nail and mast and sail and everything on that ship. Nothing is the original piece that was on it when it was first built. Is that a different ship? And this is a thought experiment for you yourself. There's no right or wrong answer here, but just think about that. Would that be a different ship? Now, some people would say, well, yeah, it's still the same ship because it's got the same name, it's got the same look, it's got the same crew, and it's got the same mission, all that stuff. It's just the material stuff is replaced, so it's still the same ship. That's what some people might say. Well, let's change it up. Let's say the crew is replaced along with the entire substance of the ship. All the parts are replaced as well. Completely new parts, completely new boards, completely new crew. Is it the same ship? Is that in something else? We change the looks. We give it a new paint job. We put on different colored sails. In addition to replacing the crew, replacing all the boards and nails, stuff like that, then is it still the same ship? I mean, we're getting pretty deep. We might say, well, yeah, it's still the same ship because let's say it's on a trade mission or whatnot. And that's what it does in its life. And it goes from the same port to the same port, delivering the same exact stuff. Well, what if we change the mission too? I mean, at what point does it, in your opinion, and this is all just for you in your mind to think about those things, in your mind, in your opinion, at what point is that a different ship? What would it take for it to be a completely different ship than when that was first built? Another example is the example of water. Let's say we have water and it's ice, frozen solid. Well, if we melt it and it melts into liquid, is that different or is it still the same thing? Then let's boil that into steam. Was that something different or is that the same thing? And what constitutes change and change into just something different? Again, this is all just something to ask in your mind. Another example to take into consideration is a caterpillar. And once a caterpillar reaches a certain stage in its life, it cocoons itself in a chrysalis. Now, is that cocooned creature still a caterpillar? Or is it something different? And then obviously that chrysalis or that cocoon burst into a butterfly. Now, would you consider that to be something different and no longer what it used to be? These are all things to think about. One more example, wood. Now, wood, if you take and you burn it and you do it in a certain way, you can actually process that wood into what we call charcoal. But, most of the carbon stuff is still there from the original wood. So is that the same piece of wood? I mean, there's no right or wrong answer here. That's for you to answer. It only burns off some of the more, forget what it is, but the more readily burnable stuff. Anyways, it's charcoal now, but you take that charcoal or even that wood and you completely burn it up and it's nothing but smoke and ash now. Is it still the same thing or is it changed into something different? Again, this is all stuff that you just have to ask yourself. We can go on and on with things like an acorn turning into an oak. At what point is the acorn no longer an acorn and is an oak? That's just something you got to decide for yourself. Change, a lot of people, this is things I gleaned from my brief study in philosophy for this particular episode. But change can occur depending on who it is and who you're talking to. They're going to define change differently. But basically, change is either a change in the form and purpose or the function of something or even someone in this particular case. The change could be a change in substance or matter, like the boards on the ship. Or the change could be a change in image. And you could change the image and that completely changes it from being one thing to another thing. It just all depends on you. If you would like to read up more on the philosophy behind change and things like this, you can read on some of those links there. And we've also got it on the notes at godhonesttruth.com. One thing I found very interesting is this whole concept of the Socrates paradox. And there they present the conundrum that you've got a pile of sand and you take away 1 grain of sand. Is it still a pile? What constitutes a pile? How many grains of sand do you have to take off before it's no longer a pile? Again, going back to the whole concept of change and when does one thing change into another thing that's completely different than the original thing. And what even defines change? What is change? You can read on that too, but this gets all into the philosophy of change and things like that. And if something interests you, go check it out. But again, I'm not a philosopher. But the thing I want you to keep in mind throughout this entire presentation, this entire teaching, is that when does something or someone change into something completely different than the starting thing or the starting person? Keep that in mind because we're going to be talking about, well, pretty much a person for the most part. So in your mind, what would constitute a change where it's no longer the original person, but someone completely and absolutely different? So last week we talked about Nicholas of Myra, better known as Saint Nicholas. Once again, just for clarification, we here at God Honest Truth, and me personally, obviously, do not subscribe to the whole concept of saints in heaven. We do not hold to the doctrine that people go to heaven when they die right now. The people only go to heaven after the resurrection. During the interim, both the righteous and the unrighteous are unconscious. They're in Sheol, in the earth, and tombs and stuff like that. They're not in heaven. Only Yeshua is in heaven because he ascended into heaven due to him being perfect and spotless, sinless, and was ascended and was exalted by Yahweh the Father. So we do not hold to the concept or doctrine of saints like the Catholics or the Orthodox do, or things like that. Just want to get that out of the way and clarify that one more time. But we will be using the phrase or the term Saint Nicholas, as that's how it's commonly said and commonly referred to. And plus, there's lots of Nicholases throughout history, and you just know who it is. We've also put in there Nicholas of Myra a lot of times just to refrain from using that whole Saint Nicholas, but sometimes we will say the phrase Saint Nicholas because it just slips out, and sometimes because it's part of the text. But anyways, just want to clarify, you know what we're talking about now and why we do what we do when it comes to Nicholas of Myra or Saint Nicholas. Anyways, last week we talked about Saint Nicholas or Nicholas of Myra, and we went over who that was, the actual real historical person. But just to recap and start off this particular teaching, since most people or a lot of people associate Santa Claus with Saint Nicholas, or they at the very least say that he was the origin of the whole Santa Claus mythos. So Nicholas of Myra was born around 270 of the Common Era, or 270 AD. Now, he was a very zealous and ardent man for the faith. We know that he was there and alive and bishop during the time of the Diocletian persecution. He was there during the time when Constantine came to power and issued the Edict of Milan, granting religious freedom to lots of people, but especially Christians. That's who we're mostly focused on this teaching and in this ministry. So he's there for the Edict of Milan in 313. He was there during the time of the Council of Nicaea in 325, when the Roman Catholic Church got its start. But as we learned last time, we do not know for certain whether or not he was actually at the Council of Nicaea. And in most likelihood, he wasn't even there. So with that being said, there's a myth going around that Nicholas actually slapped or punched Arius, but that's a lie. That's just legend. So don't believe it. It's not funny, but it didn't actually happen. However, he was alive during the time of the Council of Nicaea, and then he died about 343 CE or 343 AD. Now, why are we specifically pointing out these dates? Well, number one, to go on and show you that the first information that we get about Nicholas of Myra doesn't come about until about 400 CE, and then only a very small amount of information. That's probably some of the most reliable information that we have, and the vast majority of the things that are said about Nicholas of Myra come from writings that are hundreds of years later. In fact, it's not until the 700s that we get most of the information that gets passed around about Nicholas of Myra, the whole things that he did, the miracles he did, and stuff like that, like the saving of the 3 boys that were cut up by a butcher and brined, and he brought back to life and put them back together like a jigsaw puzzle or something like that. When he saved the 3 daughters from prostitution, when he saved the 3 innocent people from being killed when they were mistaken for other people. And yes, I'm intentionally pointing out these specific stories because the number 3 is often involved with the legends about Nicholas of Myra. Keep that in mind because it's going to come into play later on. Put that down in your notes. If you don't have notes, you're going to need them this time. Get a pen, get a piece of paper, and write this stuff down so you can refer back to it later on in the drush. Remember, number 3 associated with a lot of the legends of Nicholas of Myra. In fact, he wasn't even officially recognized as a saint until about the 9th century. So keep all that in mind too. And this just a little bit information about Nicholas of Myra. Here are some images of Nicholas of Myra. This is important for this particular teaching as well. There in the, if you're watching on video anyways, on the left, you got just a portrait of Nicholas, a drawing, which most people have probably seen before. In the middle is an image of him saving the three innocent people from being killed, their heads chopped off, or whatnot, grabbing the sword himself to prevent the execution. And there on the right is just another portrait. A couple of things to point out here and to take notice of is that the picture on the right is probably going to be one of the most accurate things. Number one, it's because it is, well, it doesn't have a halo. It doesn't have the sun disk behind him. And the sun disk didn't actually come into Christian artwork until about the middle of the 4th century. And he was already dead by that point. So the use of the halo or the use of the sun disk was not brought into Christianity yet during the time of Nicholas of Myra. Also, notice that there's no mitre and there's no fish hat on his head like he's presented most times, or at least in later depictions of him. And this mitre or that fish hat is something that didn't come into play until about the 10th century. So these are more accurate in that respect as well. Also, notice the color scheme and the beard and the hair and the head and stuff like that. This is all stuff that makes up the actual, or we think of as the actual historical figure or person of Nicholas of Myra. Now, not only in the Roman Catholic Church is he venerated and respected, but also in the Orthodox, and here is Russian Nicholas of Myra, usually pretty angry in the Russian depictions. I don't know why. Anyways, here is these are the images of the Russian version of the icons of Nicholas of Myra. Here you can see it's a little bit different. He's got a hat on in the left picture there, and it's not a mitre, it's not a fish hat, but it's still a hat that's different from the other ones we saw. And there on the right is another Russian image of Nicholas of Myra, and he's got the sun disk behind him, which is, like we discussed earlier, something that was not in place yet during the time of Nicholas of Myra's life. So as we move forward, after Nicholas dies, the Roman Empire went through some changes, and so did Christianity. Obviously, with the Edict of Milan, when religious freedom was granted to Christians and they weren't persecuted anymore, they were able to go and spread out a lot more and a lot faster than they had before. And so they went and they spread out as far as they could. Some reports have the apostles or certain apostles like Timothy going all the way to India. They went all the way up into Ireland. Think of Patrick. They went up into Britain and France and Spain and all over Europe and down into Africa and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? It's spread out all over the place. Now, for the purposes of our study tonight, we're going to be focusing on where it spread up into a little country called the Netherlands. And as it spread across Europe and across the world, Christianity took its various doctrines and teachings and quote unquote saints with them. One of the saints, obviously, they took with them, or the story they took with them of this particular saint, is Nicholas of Myra. And as this story of Nicholas of Myra went to other countries, other regions, other peoples, unfortunately, it got mixed in with a lot of other stories and customs and things like that. Across Europe, this whole concept of St. Nicholas is referred to by different things. Now, once we covered way back when in our episode a couple weeks ago on birthdays, that it was common practice back in the day or during those days not to celebrate the birthdays of someone, as in the birthday when they were physically born the first time, but rather they celebrated the anniversary of a martyr's death or a particular prominent figure, the anniversary of their death. The same was done with Nicholas of Myra. Legend has it, or it's come down to us, that Nicholas of Myra died on the 6th, keep that in mind, the 6th of December. So his day, or his saint day, when he was finally recognized and put up as a saint, was his saint day was December 6th. But as the story went across Europe and across the world, these different names, these different customs came across, and he's called different things in different parts of the world. And for instance, in Italy and Bari, remember we talked about Bari last time. But in Italy, he's known as San Nicola. In Spain, San Nicolas. Again, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, so I apologize for this. In Serbia, he's called Nikoljan, and their particular feast day for St. Nicholas now is December 19th. Why is it December 19th? Because the calendar changed. And when he died, it was the 6th of December on the Julian calendar. So they tried to hold to that same thing once the calendar changed, which somehow became December 19th. And that gives me a headache trying to think about this calendar stuff a lot of times, but that's pretty much the gist of it. Anyways, various things across cultures and across the world and stuff like that, various names that they call St. Nicholas by, and there's various customs that go along with the feast day or the celebration of quote unquote Saint Nicholas. For instance, in certain parts of the world, this is pretty much a theme that goes along with the whole Saint Nicholas thing, that if kids are told if they're good, they'll get something good on St. Nicholas Day, or even now the Christmas Day. But if they're bad, then it can be various things. It's like the good things they receive can vary depending on what part of the world you're in, and the bad things they receive can vary depending on what part of the world they're in. During a study on this, there are certain cultures, they tell them that if they're good, then St. Nicholas will bring you good things, but if you're bad, then the children are told they will be beaten. Other parts, the children are told they will be abducted by St. Nicholas and his helpers. We'll get into that in just a minute. They'll be abducted by St. Nicholas and his helpers and be taken away for a year and then returned after a year, and then they'll be good boys. Good boys and girls. I don't know what exactly happens during the interim, but they're supposed to be corrected when they come back. Another thing, or another part of the world, they tell children that if they're bad, they will be giving switching rods or rods for their parents to switch them with and discipline them with. So there's various variations, the whole St. Nicholas thing, and the veneration or the celebration of this particular Catholic saint. And going back to the whole veneration of saints, this is something that caused an uproar during the Protestant Reformation. Now, once the Protestants got going and the 95 Theses was stapled up and things went to a schism for yet again, the Protestants did not like the whole idea of saints, the veneration of saints, stuff like that, and for good reason. We won't get into all that, but just say we agree with their rejection of the veneration of saints. So anyways, they tried to do away with this whole St. Nicholas thing, and they got rid of most of the saints and most of the veneration of saints, but this whole St. Nicholas thing kind of stuck around. It's like honey. You get on your skin, it's hard to get rid of, and then you put sand on it and it's even worse. And that's what the whole celebration of St. Nicholas was like for some odd reason. I don't know why. But yeah, it's so to not have a veneration of a saint, then various Protestant countries came up with their own kind of way to try to get around it or change it up or something like that. In Britain and England, they come up with this concept of Father Christmas. Now, this wasn't supposed to be St. Nicholas, but yeah, like Shakespeare said, a rose by any other name, right? So the British come up with Father Christmas, and we'll get into that in just a moment, because that plays into our evolution of Santa Claus. Now, we're going with the American understanding and version of Santa Claus. Once the whole notion of St. Nicholas went with the spread of Christianity, it diverged into various threads, almost like an octopus or a family tree branching out and stuff like that. We got these different variations, and they done different things. The British done Father Christmas. Other people did something called the Christ Child or the Christkind, which eventually came to be known as Kris Kringle. And this was supposed to be originally at one point, it was supposed to be the baby Jesus going around delivering presents to the good boys and girls. Well, that caused problems. Then it went into like some girl that they would dress up with a crown and stuff every year, and that was supposed to be the Christkind. Yeah. Anyways, so there's different branches there, but the branch that leads up to what we're learning about Santa Claus comes through the St. Nicholas origin and then goes into the Santa Claus derivation. And you can find that Santa Claus idea in mythology in various parts of the world, like Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. For our particular study, we're going to be focusing on the branch of St. Nicholas that's referred to as Santa Claus, and especially that from the Netherlands, the Dutch. So keep all that in mind because the history and that is going to come into play here real shortly. Anyways, talking about Father Christmas, let's talk about that real quick. Here are some images of Father Christmas. Here on the left, you've got Father Christmas about to disperse something good to this child sitting there, supposedly an orphan or homeless or something like that. Now, check this out. On the top center, that is Father Christmas, but he's holding or wearing a crown or a hat made out of evergreen. Now, if you remember our dendrolatry episode in this series, evergreens are not biblical, and the use of trees and shrubs in religious practice is forbidden. It's horrid. It's something that only pagans have done. So go back and check that out for more information. But anyways, he's wearing that evergreen crown or hat, and on his back is a log, a piece of wood, right? Right, but it's a specific log. It's a Yule log. Father Christmas is carrying a Yule log. Then down there on the bottom is another image of Father Christmas. Take note of his hat. This is, like I said, the visual is going to be important here, as well as the audible information that you get through your ears. So this hat here, you can see how it's tall and pointy, and it's got a little bit of a wide brim. Remember, the image that we saw of St. Nicholas or Nicholas and Myra, they would not have been wearing hats back during that time that he lived, the historical person lived. And so this is a change in image here. So keep that in mind. But here in the bottom center there, you got that hat. It's a little bit more wide brimmed, and it's got that long, thin, coming to a point top on it. And then over there on the right is apparently a depiction of Father Christmas being awakened. And I didn't get really in depth on this research of Father Christmas, but apparently Father Christmas slept until a certain point, and then he was woken up at a certain point in the year, and I don't know. Anyways, that's a depiction of Father Christmas being woken up. And for a time, there was a separation between Santa Claus and Father Christmas. There were two different people. There's supposed to be two different people, two different mythos. One in Luxembourg, one in the Netherlands versus our study, and one in Britain. And they were two different things that were not the same thing. And here is an image depicting that such idea. Here on the left, you can see Santa Claus. This is the depiction of Santa Claus. And here he's actually got that mitre hat, and he's got that staff and whatnot. But right next to him, holding the bag of gifts, is Father Christmas. Look familiar? Well, it should. So for a time, there was both Santa Claus and Father Christmas. Nowadays, we know them or think of them as the same thing, but for a time they weren't. And still nowadays they're kind of separate, but not really. It all gets muddied, unfortunately. But it doesn't really matter. Well, I won't give you my opinion yet, but we'll just keep going through the information. Like I said, as this whole tradition or this mythos of Saint Nicholas went throughout the world, it developed into various different things depending on which region or culture you went into. Now, I talked about the helpers, or mentioned the helpers real quick a little bit earlier. And if the children were good, this is what people told their children in these various regions, that if they were good, they would get something good from Santa Claus. And if they were bad, then something bad would be given to them, or something bad would be done to them. And usually it was by Santa Claus's helpers. One of the helpers that Santa Claus had, depending on which part of the world you were in, is called the Krampus. No joke. I am not even kidding. And this is a AI image that I done. I'll admit that there's an AI image just to show the depiction here. But the story goes that if you were good, then Santa Claus would bring you something good. And if you were bad, then the Krampus would come for you. And there are fictional movies about Krampus and the evil and the horror and stuff like that. And you can even see home videos that people take of celebrations in various parts of the world where you see this Santa Claus figure coming around, but you also see this Krampus figure coming around, people dressed up as Krampus to continue this whole mythos of Santa Claus and Krampus. It's very, very disturbing. I don't even know why in the world people would come up with this, or how in the world they even thought it could even be remotely related to anything biblical. But they did. And this is just the beginning of things that are disturbing in this particular teaching. Did you ever think that Santa Claus would be disturbing? It's going to be tonight. Oh, it's going to be tonight. Moving on. There are, like I said, there's various interpretations and derivations of St. Nicholas and going into Santa Claus. And then there's various derivations even of Santa Claus. And Santa Claus has helpers, and not just the Krampus. In other parts, and I hope I'm getting this right, but in Spain, I believe it is, Santa Claus has helpers called Black Pete. Hold on to your socks here, because this is Black Pete. No joke. I'm if you're watching on audio podcast, you're really missing the impact here. But Black Pete is the helper of Santa Claus in certain parts of the world. And this is on the two pictures on the left here are actual pictures, celebrations of Santa Claus and the Black Pete's, or Black Pete. And if I remember correctly, this is in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. But you try doing that over here in America, and they will literally bring back crucifixion. This is, oh my gosh. That is, yeah. Anyways, the story goes that supposedly at some point in the story of Santa Claus in this particular region, that Santa Claus went and he acquired somehow a Moorish person to come around with him and serve him. And now it is part of the mythos of that particular culture with Santa Claus. And this is, yeah, it's highly disturbing. I don't know how other people around the world kind of view this sort of thing, but here in America, oh my goodness, there would be another civil war if someone tried to come in and have a celebration like that in a major city and have that kind of dressing up. There would be riots and protests and I don't even know what. And for once, I would probably say, yeah, they're right to do so because that is just so disturbing. Oh, anyways, we'll have to move on from this. Yeah, this is, and we're not even halfway through yet. This is going to be a long one. It's going to be a long, disturbing one. So hold on to your socks. This whole section of this particular teaching is entitled An Uninvited Guest. And we haven't even got to the uninvited guest yet. We're just talking about the splintering and the branching out of the St. Nicholas mythos. Went into the Chris canon, went into Father Christmas, it went into Santa Claus, etc., etc. But as it went, it adopted and brought in various things to some of these particular derivations. And the uninvited guest that we're talking about is that of Odin. Now, here on the right, you can see a picture of, well, an artist's depiction of Odin. It's very well drawn to be, a depiction of someone who's supposed to be portrayed as a human being, the clarity anyways. But here you've got Odin and it's supposedly dressed as a wanderer, to be disguised as a wanderer. You can't really see the hat that well, but notice the hat there. I can tell you from experience and research that the hat has a wider brim than most, and it's also got a long, pointy top to it. It's probably folded down or flopped down in the back. We've already seen that in this teaching from Father Christmas. Keep that in mind. Anyways, talking about this whole uninvited guest, and we're discussing Odin now. This comes from the myths of the Norsemen from the Eddas and Sagas. It's a 2009 publication talking about various Nordic mythology tales. Excuse me. Talks about various Nordic mythology tales and the paganism and gods associated with the Nords and Vikings and whatnot. Anyways, it says, quote, "The northern skalds or poets whose songs are preserved in the Eddas and Sagas declared that in the beginning, when there was as yet no earth, nor sea, nor air, when darkness rested over all, there existed a powerful being called Allfather, whom they dimly conceived as uncreated, as well as unseen, and that whatever he willed came to pass. Odin, Wotan, or Woden was the highest and holiest god of the northern races. He was the all-pervading spirit of the universe, the personification of air." Keep that in mind. On one occasion, Odin had disguised himself as a wanderer. The contest of wit immediately began, and Vafthrudnir questioning his guest concerning the horses which carried day and night across the sky. End quote. But keep that in mind. He is according to Nordic mythology, the personification of air. And this particular story is talking about various horses and carrying things across the sky. In this particular case, carrying day and night across the sky. That's just a little bit going on from the Magic of Yule from the warriorlodge.com. Quote, "The Allfather is particularly active in Midgard." Let me stop right there. Midgard, for those of you who don't know, there were various realms within Nordic mythology, and Midgard is Earth, where we live now. There's other realms as well where the gods lived and where the underworld was, or various underworlds actually. Midgard is where we live. So when it's talking about active in Midgard, it means active here among us. Going back, the Allfather is particularly active in Midgard during Yule. During this period, those who provoked the ire of the gods could find themselves caught in bad luck, while those whom Odin favored would receive good fortune and gifts. In fact, giving gifts was something Odin did often in sagas. Odin would sometimes show up and provide a worthy person with some special item they needed. The name of two of Santa's reindeer are Donner and Blitzen, and these translate to thunder and lightning, a callback to Odin's son Thor. Lastly, one of Odin's most popular titles is Allfather. He is also called Yulfather, translating to Yule Father. End quote. So when the ancient Brits up there in England come up with this idea of, what was it, Father Christmas or Christmas Father, where do you think they kind of got that from? You think maybe there was something kind of whispering in their ear, or something they were used to already, or whatnot? It kind of makes sense to me because there was a bunch of Germanic, Celtic, Nordic influence on that entire region, on both the Netherlands and on Britain, or Britannia as it was once called. So yeah, Odin being called Yule Father and the Brits having Father Christmas, that is at the very least a coincidence. We'll put it that way. Moving on to some more coincidences with Odin. Again, from the myths of the Norsemen, from the Eddas and Sagas. Quote, Odin as wind god was pictured as rushing through midair on his 8-footed steed called Sleipnir or Sleipnir. End quote. This is very interesting. This is the only 8-footed creature that I know of. Keep that in mind, the number 8. You probably already figured it out already, but keep that in mind, the number 8. And also the number 3, as we went before. Anyways, Odin would ride on the air through the sky on his 8-footed horse called Sleipnir. But continuing with this particular vein of thought, Odin's, and this comes from sonsofvikings.com, quote, Odin's 8-legged flying horse is named Sleipnir. The original Santa rode on a horse. When going to war, Odin rode on Sleipnir's back. The Eddic poem Sigdrifumul mentions Sleipnir having runes cut into his teeth and onto the straps of his sleigh. The magical flying horse also, at least at times, pulled a sleigh. In snowy Scandinavia, animal-drawn chariots were replaced by animal-drawn sleds, end quote. And that just makes sense, because if you're in snow-covered terrain and it's extremely rocky around that kind of area and stuff too, a chariot is not going to do that much good. So a sleigh is the obvious choice in snow-covered ground. So a sleigh makes sense, but it kind of gives a clue as to where someone else got their particular sleigh. Keep that in mind. Also, in particular variations or derivations of Santa Claus, the children are told that Santa Claus rides on a white horse on the tops of houses, on the rooftops. That's Santa Claus. And then would drop stuff down the chimney for the good boys and girls or the bad boys and girls. But it's just one horse and it's not flying through the air. So there is that distinction. But that was way back when. Things have changed since then, but just take all this into account and where this information is coming from and where it's leading into, because we're going to get on all that. Here is some, let's take a break for just a moment. This is something I came across as well. And this is the triple horn of Odin. And maybe you'll say bad things about me, but I just thought it was kind of neat, or at least neatly drawn anyways. However, the thing that really kind of stuck out to me was the whole triple part. Think back to all the stories of Nicholas and Myra that we've heard about. A lot of those have the number 3 involved with them. The 3 boys who were chopped up by the butcher, the 3 girls that he saved from prostitution by providing them dowries, the 3 innocent prisoners that he saved from execution. 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. And here's another 3, but 3 is something that is very prominent within paganism. And here is an example coming from Nordic paganism. And this is Odin's triple horn. That's not to say that the number three or the concept of three originated in paganism. I'm just saying that's something to keep in mind and be aware of. For the purposes of this teaching, keep in mind that three being associated with Nicholas of Myra, and also keep in mind that number 8, because all this is going to come to play as we put everything together. But so far, we've only been talking about things that's happened over in the Mediterranean, over in Europe, over in Scandinavia, and places like that. Let's go ahead and start moving across the pond to America. And when people move from one place to another, they not only move themselves and their family and some of their possessions, they also bring along with them their customs and their culture and their beliefs and things like that. Santa Claus is no exception. Now, in the early days, even before America was America, there were various settlements and towns and cities and stuff like that that were established in various colonies. One of these towns that was established was something called New Amsterdam. This comes from wikipedia.org. Amsterdam is the capital and largest city of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, end quote. Again, from wikipedia.org, quote, New Amsterdam was a 17th century Dutch settlement established at the southern tip of Manhattan Island that served as the seat of the colonial government in New Netherland. In 1664, the English military seized control over New Amsterdam and renamed it New York after the Duke of York, end quote. So you've all heard of New York. I hope it doesn't matter where you are around the world, you've probably heard of the city of New York, for better or worse. And here on the bottom, you actually had the seal of New Amsterdam there. They established a city, a town, and a seal to go with it, and all the trimmings, right? But a quick summary of the timeline of New Amsterdam is that it was settled and founded in 1624 by Dutch immigrants. It was conquered in 1664. 40 years later, it was conquered by the English. Then 9 years later, after that, in 1673, it was recaptured by the Dutch. But only a year later, the Dutch gave it back to the English for whatever reason. I didn't get into the details of it. I just thought it was rather interesting to see the evolution of New York and where it came from and what it was originally named and all that good stuff. But New York is going to be important, or it's going to be it's going to play into our historical information about our study this evening. But anyways, so far we haven't really got into the name or the attributes or the look of the image, stuff like that, of what we know of as Santa Claus. We've talked about Santa Claus. We've talked about St. Nicholas. We've talked about the Christkin. We talked about Krampus and Black Pete and et cetera, et cetera. But we haven't really said anything about the actual name or word of Santa Claus. Now, Sinterklaas, the derivation of St. Nicholas from the Netherlands, Sinterklaas actually means St. Nicholas. That's where Sinterklaas comes from. It's the whole phrase St. Nicholas, where the whole phrase Santa Claus comes from Sinterklaas. That's as far as the name part of it goes anyways. And the first mention that we can get, or that I've been able to find, comes from a publication in 1821. This comes from wikipedia.org, quote. And this is a poem or a publication that is published for children. This is the first mention of the name Santa Claus, but it's all one word and it's spelled differently than we spell it today. You can look at the notes on our website or watch the video or the slides here to get the exact spelling. That's really different than the way we normally know it. Anyways, from wikipedia.org, quote, Old Santa Claus with Much Delight is an anonymous illustrated children's poem published in New York in 1821. It is the first publication to mention and illustrate Santa Claus's reindeer and his sleigh, as well as being the first to describe his arrival on Christmas Eve. The accompanying illustrations are the earliest published artistic depictions of a Santa Claus figure. The accompanying engravings are the earliest images of a Santa figure. They show Santa Claus dressed in a red outfit and are the first reference to his being dressed in that color. Santa Claus brings presents only for good children, and in the first illustration, they are explicitly called rewards. Naughty children receive a long black birchen rod whose use for parental punishment is endorsed as a command of God. End quote. And so here you see some images of that particular publication. And that publication was a poem entitled Old Santa Claus with Much Delight. And it was intended for children and published in 1821. And here are the pictures that were published along with it. And there's more that goes along with it, but these are the two most relevant, I think, for our particular study this evening. But there on that top picture, you've got this Santa Claus character. He is riding in a sleigh. He's got a whip and he's got one reindeer. Again, it's just one reindeer at this point. And you can see, look at the hat. It's almost like one of those big, tall British soldier hats, almost. Big, tall, furry, round thing. And it's not anything like we're used to, but that's the first mention and pretty much the first imagery we see of this particular character named Santa Claus. It's not the Santa Claus we know today, Santa Claus. There in the bottom picture, you get a better look at the hat, but instead of the red, he actually has a green upper garment on, and it looks to be furry, like the furry we're used to on Santa Claus. But anyways, it's green. But anyway, this is the first real depiction of Santa Claus and the color red that we see in the whole Santa Claus mythos. But it's not done yet. This is the very earliest stages, very earliest images of what would come down to us as Santa Claus. Going on, we get to a guy named Clement Moore Clark. And this comes from wikipedia.org. Quote, Clement Clark Moore was an American writer, scholar, and real estate developer. He is best known as author of the Christmas poem, A Visit from St. Nicholas, which first named each of Santa Claus's reindeer. A Visit from St. Nicholas, which later became widely known by its opening line, "Was the Night Before Christmas," was first published anonymously in 1823. Moore publicly claimed authorship in 1837. Moore was born on July 15th, 1779 in New York City. As first published in the Sentinel, the names of Santa's last two reindeer in the poem were Dunder and Bliksem. Donder is the correct Dutch word for thunder, and the phrase was used by multiple English and American authors with a variety of different spellings in the late 1700s and early 1800s. End quote. And this is, I found this very, very interesting personally, anyways, because Clement Clark Moore is talking about a visit from St. Nicholas, a poem that he came up with referencing Saint Nicholas. Now, was Moore a Catholic? Nope. Was he an Eastern Orthodox, like in Russia, or Greek Orthodox and whatnot? Someone that does all these saints? Nope. In fact, what I could find out, his father, Benjamin Moore, you know, the famous painter? No, no, I'm just joking. I don't think Benjamin Moore, this Benjamin Moore, was a painter. Anyways, Clement Clark Moore, his father was Benjamin Moore. And Benjamin Moore was trained and ordained as a bishop and a priest in the Anglican Church. For those of you who don't know, the Anglican Church is the state church of Britain. When Britain went Protestant, they didn't go with Calvinism or Lutheranism or anything like that. They sure didn't want to be Catholic anymore, so they renamed, came up with another denomination and is referred to as Anglicanism. And there's a lot of King Henry goes in that story too. Anyways, I'll get off of that. But anyways, Anglican is the official state church of England, and that's what Benjamin Moore was a bishop and priest of. Clement Clark Moore was also a member of the Anglican Church in America, and the Anglican Church in America is called the Episcopal Church. So Clement Clark Moore, who wrote about Saint Nicholas, was Episcopalian, which I found to be rather contradictory from a strict standpoint. Anyways, if you know any Protestants nowadays, Baptist, Methodist, stuff like that, to celebrate Christmas and Santa Claus, they're also celebrating and venerating a saint in particular, or maybe not. That's some question to keep in mind, remember? But going on, this poem, the Visit from St. Nicholas, or the Night Before Christmas, as it's more commonly known. Here is the text of that I'm putting up on the screen right now, but I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's long and it's already going to be long enough. We're already an hour into the drosh itself. But some points to point out here in this particular poem that stand out as contradictory to standard Protestantism and standard understanding of the Bible and stuff like that, et cetera, is number one, the reference to Saint Nicholas. Protestants don't do saints, but for some reason, they do Saint Nicholas and Santa Claus. Also, notice if you read through this particular poem that he mentions a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. Why a miniature sleigh? Why is that so important? Because in the original publication of this poem, Santa Claus, or rather Saint Nick, he's never referred to as Santa Claus in this poem. He's always referred to as Saint Nick or Saint Nicholas. But Saint Nick is a short, tiny elf-like figure, not a full-grown man. So that's why it says a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer in the original poem. Going on, there is also other things that come into play here. We mentioned Donder and Blitzen earlier, and that is reference to the Dutch words for thunder and lightning, a reference to Thor, the son of Odin. Some other things that were, or some other reindeer that were named inappropriately, in my opinion, were Comet, and well, not really Comet, but Cupid, because Cupid is a pagan god. And vixen. Vixen, if for those of you who don't know, is a word that means spirited or fierce woman, a shrew, or a woman who is sexually attractive and seductive and leads men astray. That would be vixen, the name of one of the reindeer in Moore's poem, "'Twas a Night Before Christmas." But anyways, it continuously refers to this particular character as Saint Nicholas, not anything else. He also says that this particular character is dressed all in fur and tarnished with ashes and soot. This is the color description of the character in this particular poem, is black. Not red, not green, not white, nothing else. He's tarnished with ashes and soot, which would be a black color, and he's dressed all in fur. Then we go on, and we see in this particular poem that this character is smoking a pipe, a tobacco pipe. And it also shows that the smoke, it encircled his head like a wreath. And this is supposed to be a children's poem. I mean, I guess it was more accepted back in the day than it is now, but you can get some of the, I don't know, what would you call it? Anyways, it wouldn't be accepted nowadays in a children's poem, talking about the main character smoking or whatnot. And then down below that, we have this particular character referenced as a chubby and plump old elf. Again, going back to that small miniature sleigh and the tiny reindeer. And now the character is portrayed as an elf, something small and tiny. Think about this as well. In the Bible, where does it talk about elves? Anyways, the poem ends up with this character, Saint Nicholas, and this particular elf, whatnot, flying away, and he's exclaiming to everyone, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night." That's how the poem ends up. Now, this I take as something he's saying in a loud voice, which is actually contradictory to what we know of nowadays, because nowadays Santa Claus is supposed to be all stealth-like, right? Much more so than even the SEAL teams. He's supposed to be all stealth-like. You don't know he comes and you don't hear him or anything like that. But this character in the original "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" poem is saying in a loud voice and waking everybody up, or where everybody can hear him as he flies through the air. It's just, it stands in contrast to what we know of nowadays as Santa Claus. But this poem in particular is referred to as one of the most well-known poems and verses in all of American literature. I'd say they're about right, because this, even if you don't celebrate Christmas, you know what the Night Before Christmas poem is all about, and probably what most of the words are. You've heard it over and over and over again. But this particular poem really established a lot of the attributes and the things that we know about our concept of Santa Claus, and it really stuck around. And it's the first time we hear about 8 reindeer. Now, some things to keep in mind. Number 1, why is there 8? Number 2, why are they reindeer? Number 3, why is there a sleigh? The reason I ask these particular questions is that this is all supposed to be coming from the origin of Nicholas of Myra. Nicholas of Myra, if you remember from last episode, Myra is in the southern part of what is nowadays Turkey. Nicholas of Myra was Greek. He was over in that Mediterranean region where it's warm. It's not snow covered. They don't need sleighs in Greece. They don't need sleighs in Turkey. So why would this supposed Saint Nicholas, a Greek, need a northern animal to pull a northern mode of transportation, if it's all supposed to be Saint Nicholas and all coming from this whole Nicholas of Myra thing? Again, at this point, has it changed from one person to another, where it's completely 2 different people at this point? That's something you got to ask yourself, and only you can answer for yourself. Moving on, we're not done yet. We haven't even got into the American politics yet, and we're about to get into that. This is going to be all so good. Whew. Santa Claus, or the whole mythos of Santa Claus, continues to develop. Now, in 1823, when this poem came out, that was not before Christmas, Christmas wasn't really celebrated in America. In fact, for a while there in the colonies, especially in Boston, we've got evidence that in Boston, especially, that Christmas was actually outlawed. You could be fined and punished for celebrating Christmas in particular colonies and parts of America before 1823, anyways. So it really wasn't celebrated throughout history. In fact, here in America, it's less than 200 years old. It's only maybe 150 years old. In 1823, it certainly wasn't really celebrated, except by a minor few. It wasn't this big, widespread celebration like we know of nowadays. So in 1823, even though Moore wrote this poem about St. Nicholas and mentioned Christmas, stuff like that, it wasn't widespread. Not everyone believed or celebrated Christmas at that point. However, when Santa Claus and Christmas really got its start and traction as being a celebration here in America was during the War of Northern Aggression, otherwise known as the Civil War. And let me introduce a new person, a new historical figure to you, and his name is Thomas Nast. And here's a little bit of information about Thomas Nast from wikipedia.org. Quote, Thomas Nast was a German-born American caricaturist and editorial cartoonist, often considered to be the father of the American cartoon. Nast was born in military barracks in Landau, Bavaria, Germany. Nast was the last child of Apollonia and Joseph Thomas Nast. In 1846, Joseph left Landau. He sent his wife and children to New York City, where they arrived in June 1846, and at the end of his enlistment in 1850, he joined them there. Thomas Nast, created a modern version of Santa Claus based on the traditional German figures of Saint Nicholas, or Sinterklaas, and Weihnachtsmann, and the political symbol of the elephant for the Republican Party, the GOP. Nast's depiction of iconic characters such as Santa Claus and Uncle Sam are widely credited as forming the basis of popular depictions used today, end quote. Now, Nast did come up with the imagery that we know of today as Santa Claus. He also come up with the symbol of the elephant for the Republican Party. He did not do the donkey for the Democrat Party. He did not come up with Uncle Sam, though he did use those images a lot in his cartoons, so he's credited with popularizing those images, but he did not create them. Just a tidbit, a tangent there. Getting back to our study here about Santa Claus, Nast really established the image or the portrait of Santa Claus that we know today. Now, we've already covered there's been one drawing or instance of a visual of Santa Claus that's already been published back in 1821, but that didn't really stick. The image we got today comes from Thomas Nast, and it comes from a political cartoon that he did in favor of the North and against the South. And he was trying to put forth the idea that even Santa Claus was for the North and Santa Claus was against the South. Here in this particular cartoon, you see it's all black and white, so we don't really know the colors that he was intending, but we can kind of guess. For my part, I kind of deduced that his jacket or his upper part or upper garment, there it has the solid color but has stars on it, and his pants are striped. And this is supposed to be reminiscent of the American flag. So the way I'm taking that is his upper part was blue and white, not red, and his trousers or his pants were red and white. In this particular cartoon, he's actually also holding a doll or a puppet of Jefferson Davis, the leader of the Confederacy. And it was all supposed to be mocking and poking fun at the Confederacy and Thomas Nast, and I'm sorry, not Thomas Nast, but Jefferson Davis and all this other stuff, right? But this is where the American politics comes into it. Santa Claus, at least the American tale of Santa Claus, was a Republican supporter and was against slavery and the Democratic South. So there's the whole American politics going into Santa Claus now. And this is the political cartoon for the North, for the Republicans, that Thomas Nast came up with. And this portrayal of Santa Claus is what stuck around and really became the basis for the image of the Santa Claus that we know today. Not the colors. We'll get into the colors in just a minute. So hold your horses. We're not got to that yet. But notice also the hat that he has here, and that is a pointy hat, not a mitre hat or anything else. It's the pointy hat that we're more familiar with today. Another one of Thomas Nast's cartoons shows another depiction of Santa Claus, and this was written later on in life and later on in history. This was created in 1881 by Thomas Nast. And here again, you can see that the whole image of Santa Claus, he's holding and smoking a pipe while carrying kids' toys. Now, the image on the right, I just put there for show, but that wasn't done by Nast. Someone else colored that in later. And it's actually not really true, in my opinion, to the original that Thomas Nast did. For instance, if you look closely at the outfit that he drew of Santa Claus, he's not actually wearing the fur coat and stuff that we're used to today like you kind of see on the right there. What he's actually wearing is long johns, undergarments. And that's what he would travel around in, according to Thomas Nast in his depiction. So you've got a obese elderly gentleman in underwear, undergarments, smoking tobacco, holding kids' toys, taking it to the kids, breaking into their homes at night. This is Santa Claus. So, anyways, we've got the attributes from the poem "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." We get the beginnings of the name from the 1821 poem that was written. We've got the imagery, or at least the basic outline and parts of the image from Thomas Nast. We don't yet really have the color settled. We've got green, we've got blue, we've got red, and et cetera, et cetera. So now we move on a little bit more in history, and we come to a gentleman named Haddon Hubbard Sunbloom. This comes from wikipedia.org. Quote, Haddon Hubbard Sonny Sunbloom was an American artist of Swedish and Finnish descent and best known for the images of Santa Claus he created for the Coca-Cola Company. Sunbloom was born in Muskegon, Michigan, to a Swedish-speaking family. His father came from the farm Norgards in the village of Sundboda in Foglo Islands, now Finland, while his mother, Karen Anderson, was from Sweden. Sunbloom is best remembered for his advertising work, specifically the Santa Claus advertisement. It was he who depicted Santa Claus in a red suit when he painted for the Coca-Cola Company. Sunbloom's Claus firmly established the larger-than-life grandfatherly Claus as a key figure in American Christmas imagery, end quote. And that really stuck. And it's what's come down to us today. That's what we know of as the colors of Santa Claus. Continuing on, the article continues, quote, according to the Coca-Cola Company, for inspiration, Sunbloom turned to Clement Clark Moore's 1823 poem, A Visit from St. Nicholas. Moore's description of St. Nick led to an image of Santa that was warm, friendly, pleasantly plump, and human. Sunbloom painted portraits of Santa that helped to create the modern image of Santa, an interpretation that today lives on in the minds of people of all ages all over the world. Sunbloom's family most likely also got Christmas greetings sent from Sweden and Finland alone. The cards in Sweden and Swedish-speaking Finland had motifs painted by Jenny Nystrom of a friendly and charming Jultom Santa dressed in red and white, end quote. So we're just about to the end of the evolution of Santa as we know here in America. We got the name that first appears about 1821. We got the attributes in 1823 in the poem "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." We get the basic image and what he looks like from black and white drawings by Thomas Nast, a political cartoonist during the Civil War. And we get the colors from a advertising creator for the Coca-Cola Company. And that's where we get the red and white from. And just to clarify things, Coca-Cola did not invent Santa Claus. That was already around before Coca-Cola came up with all this advertising stuff. But they did establish and solidify the colors of Santa Claus. Important distinction. They didn't come up with Santa Claus, but they established the colors for Santa Claus. And that's pretty much how it all comes down to us today. It continues to evolve and change, but that's pretty much the majority of what we know and understand about Santa Claus today. Here on the left is the image that has Sunbloom created for the Coca-Cola Company that became what we know of as Santa today, as far as the image, colors, and the attire and stuff like that. He's no longer wearing the undergarments that Nast had drawn him in certain pictures. It's a fur coat and boots and pants that we're all used to today. And here on the right, you see another depiction there. Now, Sunbloom was also famous for other pictures as well. He did lots of stuff that we know of here in America that we probably never thought of. He did the Aunt Jemima drawings. He also did the Quaker Oats drawings for the Quaker Oats guy. He did the Sprite Boy for the Sprite advertising for the Coca-Cola company. And one that particularly hits home for me is the recruiting poster for the Marines, or a recruiting poster for the Marines that you can see here on the left. And it's actually very iconic, and it stands out, and it's remembered all throughout history. It's something that's going to stand the test of time because everyone knows it and it's instantly recognizable. We've seen it before, but that was a drawing by Sunbloom, the same guy who created the image of Santa Claus that we know today. But that is the origin, the history, and the evolution comes down to us as the Santa Claus that we know and think of here in America. And it's actually went back across the pond, and Santa Clauses went back to Europe and Britain and places like that, and has actually replaced and moved out the Santa Claus traditions and understandings of some particular areas as well. So it's still going on. It's still continuing to migrate and mutate and evolve. Even today, it's still not finalized. But let's start winding down, start wrapping up, and let's start thinking real quick about all the things we know of as Santa Claus and the history and evolution, stuff like that. And let's think for ourselves. And there's a whole bunch more that could have went into this. When I developed this whole series of episodes about Christmas, used to just do one episode, and you couldn't get all the information in about Christmas in one episode. So I broke it down into various parts, including Santa Claus. And I thought Santa Claus could be something that should be able to take up its own episode. Well, it's already almost an hour and a half on just the drosh, and we haven't even got to everything that could be said about this whole history. Could have got into the whole Christkin. We could have got into the whole study and more information about Norse and pagan mythology that got moved in. We could have gotten into more information about Santa Claus and Father Christmas. So there could be a whole series just on the history of Santa Claus. But from the information we know that we put forth in this particular teaching, they come down from the vein that came down from St. Nicholas to Santa Claus to Santa Claus, et cetera, that we know here in America. So let's think about all that information and the questions that was posed to us at the very beginning. How much can someone or something change before we're speaking about a different person? And why even the need for a change if it's supposed to be the same guy? And what I'm referencing here is what we know of as Santa Claus today and the historical figure of Nicholas of Myra. Is Santa Claus Saint Nicholas? Is Santa Claus Nicholas of Myra? After everything we've learned, after the whole history and all the changes and all the adaptations and all the additions that were put into the mythos, are we still talking about the same guy? And if not, can we accurately refer to Santa Claus as Saint Nick? Something to think about. And also, like I said earlier, why even the need for a change if it's supposed to be the same guy? If you're one of those proponents for the whole Santa Claus mythos, you say, well, it's just, based on Nicholas or Saint Nicholas, and that's what it is. Why do we need to change anything about the historical figure and what he did into what we have now? Why the need for a change? And that's if you still think it's the same guy, same thing. There's no need for a change in other saints. We never changed Valentine into Cupid or Cupid Claus or whatever. It's still Valentine, still Saint Valentine, if you're Catholic. And should we really venerate or worship saints to begin with? This is the whole Protestant question that was back at the Protestant Reformation. In my opinion, no, but you decide for yourself. And if You say no, that we should not venerate or worship saints, then why go along with this whole Santa Claus thing? Because as a lot of people put, it's just Saint Nicholas, and the Saint Nicholas tradition is still a veneration of a saint. Something else to think about. Like I said earlier, there was no mitre in the 4th century. There's also no sun disk or halo during the time of Nicholas of Myra. So keep that in mind as we talk about the image that has changed from Nicholas of Myra to the Santa Claus that we got today. If things have changed and the mitre and stuff was brought in to Catholicism, sometimes known as Christianity, but the mitre was brought in and was put on all the saints, and you even see Santa Claus depicted with a mitre. You see certain portraits in stained glass of St. Nicholas wearing a mitre. So why doesn't Santa have a mitre hat? Why has he got the floppy furry hat that we usually see him with? Again, if you're one of the proponents for Santa Claus being just St. Nicholas, then why does he have the mitre hat like the Catholics portray St. Nicholas wearing nowadays? The whole derivation of Santa Claus does. So why not Santa Claus? These are all questions for you to answer yourself in your own mind, and something to think about, and possibly even propose to other people that you meet and talk to. If Santa, it really is supposed to be St. Nicholas and not something completely different. Again, for the sake of conversation, we're assuming you're going with the idea that he's the same guy. If they're not something completely different, then one could also tell their kids that they can visit the bones of Santa Claus in Bari, Italy. Remember, last week we did the episode on St. Nicholas, and we learned that some people came and stole the bones of Nicholas of Myra and took them back to Bari, where they still are today. So if Santa Claus is just St. Nicholas, you could tell your kids, hey, we're going to go visit dead Santa and see Santa's bones. It gets even worse than that. Also, remember that we learned last time in our St. Nicholas episode that there is an ooze that comes out from the coffin of St. Nicholas, and the Catholics harvest this stuff, which they call myrrh. They harvest it every year and they sell it in their stores. They're at the basilica or cathedral, whatever it is. Yeah. So you could take your kids to Bari to see the bones of Santa and roll around in some Santa juice if you wanted to do that. I mean, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I'm getting off topic here and probably not for the better, but I just had that thought earlier and I'm like, oh, that's hilarious. Go see the bones of Santa and roll around in some Santa juice. But anyways, if we're talking about this saints, veneration or worship of saints and things like that, personally, I like to get all back to the Bible. And the Bible has some very strong and strict observances and regulations when it comes to dead bodies. Now, apply this to your thinking as well when you're thinking about the collection of the ooze that comes from the coffin of St. Nicholas. We read in Numbers chapter 19, verses 11 through 13. He who touches the dead of any human being is unclean for 7 days. He is to cleanse himself with the water on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day he is clean. But if he does not cleanse himself on the 3rd day, then on the 7th day he is not clean. Anyone who touches the dead of a human being and does not cleanse himself defiles the dwelling place of Yahweh, and that being shall be cut off from Israel. He is unclean. The water for uncleanness was not sprinkled on him. His uncleanness is still upon him. Also from Numbers chapter 19, verse 16. Anyone in the open field who touches someone slain by a sword or who has died, or a bone of a man, or a burial site, is unclean for 7 days. This is not good. This is a whole hygiene part of the regulations of Scripture, and it's important. God knows what he's doing. Yahweh created the earth and everything in the universe, He knows what's good for us, and he says, do not touch the dead stuff. And we know nowadays from germ theory and all that, and bacteria and microscopes, that you could get really sick or even die from decomposing bodies. So that's why we don't do it. But they didn't know back then. He was just told by the Creator, don't do this. And those of us who are faithful and trust in Yahweh go by what he tells us to do. Unfortunately, apparently the Catholics do not do that, because they still take the ooze from the decomposing body of one of their dead saints. Now, yes, people in scripture did touch dead bodies. They had to, in order to, take care of them, to entomb them or wrap them up or bury them or whatnot. But it wasn't just willy-nilly. They understood that they were unclean and should not be touching anyone else or anything holy or going to the temple or stuff like that for a set period of time. This is totally disregarded by what we're talking about here with Nicholas of Myra, when they take the ooze from Nicholas's decomposing body after hundreds of years even, and they have it in the church. That is, the whole place is unclean according to scripture, and anyone who buys it, takes it home with them, uses it, puts it on themselves, they're unclean and continuously unclean. And it's just complete disregard for scripture in this aspect. So keep all that in mind as we think about this whole thing, St. Nicholas, Nicholas of Myra, and Santa Claus. Moving on, some more to think about. We're not even close to being done yet. Well, we are close, but we got a few more things to go through. Anyways, those of you who know about Protestants or who are Protestant knows that we're not supposed to venerate, worship, celebrate, or seek the intercession of quote unquote saints. We look at Revelation chapter 19, verse 10. And I fell at his feet to worship him, but he said to me, see, do not do it. I am your fellow servant and of your brothers who possess the witness of Yeshua. Worship Elohim. For the witness of Yeshua is the spirit of prophecy. Now, just a little caveat here, in case you don't understand this. In the Middle East, we went over this in our worship episode during our Godhead series. But in the Middle East, and especially the Semitic cultures, like the Hebrews and the Arabs and the Persians especially, they would bend down and they would bow themselves or kneel in front of someone that was superior in rank or a higher social status, or someone they wanted to show respect to, or stuff like that. And that's called shalha in Hebrew, or proskuneo in Greek. Unless I'm wrong, and I've totally forgot the word here, but I'm thinking that the word here for worship is proskuneo. So what John here in Revelation is trying to do to this angel is show him respect and give him honor and stuff like that. But at this point in the story, the angel is saying, no, we're not having any of that. I'm not above you anymore. We're all equals. We're all brothers. Don't do that. Only worship Yahweh. Only worship Elohim. But this is with an angel, and it's also something or someone or some being that is living, not dead and unconscious. Take that into account. We're not to do this to anything that's dead and passed on and not even conscious. So take all that in mind. We're not to venerate or worship or seek the intercession of saints, because it's even worse than just trying to show them respect or venerate them and whatnot. We're also told in scripture that the people of Yahweh, the true faithful people of Yahweh, are not to seek out the dead. Deuteronomy chapter 18, verses 10 through 11. Let no one be found among you who makes his son or daughter pass through the fire, or one who practices divination, or a user of magic, or one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or one who conjures spells, or a medium, or a spiritist, or one who calls up the dead. Don't do it. Don't call up the dead. Don't call to the dead. Don't speak to the dead, because they're dead. They're unconscious. They know not. They do not praise. They do not sing. They know nothing. This is all according to scripture. Yeshua is also the one to be our mediator, not some dead, unconscious, quote unquote, saint. 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 5, for there is one Elohim and one mediator between Elohim and men, the man, Messiah, Yeshua. So who is it that intercedes for us between us and Yahweh? It's Yeshua, not some saint. Again, it's Yeshua. We're not supposed to seek the intercession of some other human being or someone who is dead and unconscious. No, it's Yeshua. That is who seeks intercession for us, who is our mediator between Yahweh and us. He says that no one comes to the Father except through me. Not through purgatory, not through some saint, through Yeshua. Also, this gets even crazier. There are certain towns that were renamed or named themselves Santa Claus. Specifically, the phrase Santa Claus. No joke. I mean, other places were named, they named themselves Bethlehem or North Pole or even Christmas. But yeah, there are certain towns that rename themselves as Santa Claus. There are also people who legally changed their name to Santa Claus. Absolute craziness. So think about this. If Santa Claus is really supposed to be just St. Nicholas, just St. Nick, well, then what about the mythical elves? Do you find elves in the Bible? Nope. Do you find elves in like Greek or Roman mythology? As far as I know, you don't. Do you know, or I do know where you find some elves at, though. You find it in Nordic mythology. The elves in Nordic mythology were craftsmen of great and wondrous things. Supposedly, according to Nordic mythology, the elves created the hammer for Thor, among a great many other things. So elves by themselves and elves as craftsmen comes from Nordic mythology. What else have we studied and learned about this particular teaching that comes from Nordic mythology? All the attributes of Odin that were woven in to the whole Santa Claus mythos. Now we get also to the elves and the helpers of, supposedly helpers of Santa Claus. Next, if the Santa Claus mythos doesn't incorporate Nordic pagan elements, then why reindeer instead of some Greek animal? And why 8 instead of some other number? Now, if you're in Greece, I don't think they have reindeer down there. They have horses, they have camels, they have donkeys, obviously, not reindeer. So if Santa Claus is just St. Nicholas, it's just all St. Nicholas or Nicholas and Myra, then why reindeer and why 8? Because remember, the legends about St. Nicholas or Nicholas and Myra usually involve the number 3, not 8. Where does that number 8 come from? I don't know, maybe some 8-footed horse that flies through the air with some pagan god? Just maybe. Going on. Could there possibly be a glorification of obesity, breaking and entering, tobacco use, etc., even if maybe it's unintentional? The early portrayals, like we saw in the drawings and the images earlier, or watching the video or looking at slides, these early portrayals of Santa Claus showed him smoking a pipe, and it's clearly a pipe. No rationalizing away from that. It's a tobacco pipe that he's smoking. So could there possibly be some sort of glorification of these various things that we really don't want children or even adults partaking in? I mean, there's obesity epidemic now, and we're putting this figure of Santa Claus up on a pedestal in the wintertime, and people are seeing him say, oh, well, look what, that figure is. He's fat and obese, and probably nothing wrong with that. Breaking and entering. As long as leave something as a gift, is it okay to go break into someone's house and watch them sleep? I did that. They get cops called on me. Going on, when the heart, the will, and the spirit take on an entirely new nature, then we witness something profound, the same vessel, but a new creation within. This is just in general when it comes to the concept or the subject of Santa Claus and Nicholas of Myra. This is just my opinion and the way I answered the questions from earlier. But in my opinion, Santa Claus is not the same thing as Nicholas of Myra. In fact, I feel sorry for the historical figure Nicholas of Myra because he was zealous and ardent for the faith. He would have been opposed to paganism, and he probably really would have come up and smacked somebody if he was brought forward in time and shown what kind of thing he was made into nowadays. Now, I think the historical figure Nicholas of Myra and Santa Claus, and even Sinterklaas for that matter, are different ideas. They're different functions. They're different people insofar as you can call a fairy tale a person. I think they're all different. And that's just my opinion. Like we asked at the start, can something ever change into something different? And when is something or someone no longer what it used to be? Again, those are questions that you answer for yourself. I gave you my take on it, my opinion, but you answer those for yourself and answer for your own self whether Nicholas of Myra, quote unquote Saint Nicholas, is the same thing as Santa Claus. So in summary, let's wrap this up. It's already long enough. Nicholas of Myra was a bishop who lived at the end of the 3rd century and beginning of the 4th century. Christianity spread throughout the world, taking its teachings and its people with it, and unfortunately, some bad things were incorporated and brought into it along the way. Santa Claus is a derivation and continuation of the Nicholas of Myra story. Attributes and legends about Odin were incorporated into the Sinterklaas mythos. When the Dutch and Germanic peoples migrated to America, they brought their myths and cultures with them. The first mention of the name Santa Claus was in 1821. The poem A Visit from St. Nicholas was first published in 1823, and this established most of what we know about Santa Claus, but still referred to as St. Nick in that poem. Thomas Nast, in an 1863 political cartoon, mostly established the look of Santa Claus. Haddon Sundblom established the color scheme, the red and white, that remained with Santa that we know today. And there's no biblical justification for the veneration or worship of people who have died, with the lone exception of Yeshua. And that's just the God honest truth. We hope that you got something out of this. We hope that you learned something and you're more educated than you were when you started this particular teaching. So if you got something out of it, that really lifts our spirits. That's what we're here for, is to serve you and bring out the education so that you know more and you can go deeper in your walk in the faith. And we hope that you did get something out of this particular teaching. If you would, go down below. Let us know if you're someone who supports the idea of Santa Claus or if you oppose it. And also, do you think that Santa Claus and Saint Nick or Nicholas of Myra are the same person? Let us know down below in the comments. When you get done down there, make sure to also go up above that, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell. Make sure you hit the thumbs up if you liked it. Hit the thumbs down if you didn't like it, but let us know in the comments so that we can improve future videos. And also hit that share button and share this video around with someone else who might enjoy the same kind of content. Also, if you would like more notes than what we presented here in this particular teaching, you can go to our website and click on the post for this particular article or this particular episode. There you'll find the on-demand video. You'll find the draw slides. You'll find the notes that we took. You'll also find the transcript. And just a special mention, the notes have links in them that you can click on. And one of the links is to a collection of the images that we used during this as well. So go to our website for that article post, or even more easy, go down below, click on the link in the description, and that'll take you directly to it. So in just a minute, we'll be doing the Aaronic benediction, but we're going to take just a quick break and allow you to gather anyone there with you, next to you, if you want them to be next to you when we do that. Oh yeah, Mr. Horn, we didn't even get into the Saturnalia part. that really plays into the whole Christmas thing, but it wasn't a part of the Santa Claus in my opinion, but we'll have to get into that a little bit later. Maybe even next episode, we'll see, when we talk about the whole December 25th date, because that goes right around the dates of Saturnalia when it's usually celebrated. I'll tell you, my throat is about gone. My voice won't be talking tomorrow. Anyways, I want to take like always, take the moment to thank everyone who supports us financially. Your donations and your financial support really do help us. We really, really do appreciate that. So thank you so much for that. And if you would like to know more information about supporting us financially, you can go to our website for more information, or write to us at team@godhonesttruth.com through email, and we can give you some more information that way. We also want to thank everyone who has supported us through your prayers and your words of encouragement. The past year and a half has been rough, to say the least, but hopefully that has now come to an end, a conclusion. Only time will tell, but we hope it's all done and over with. So we'll see, but we really do appreciate your prayers and your words of support and words of encouragement. Thank you so much for that. So now let's go ahead and wrap up tonight's service with the Aaronic benediction. Yevarikaka Yahweh, Vayishmarecha, Yair Yahweh Panah Elecha, Vihunecha, Yesah Yahweh, Panah Elecha, Veyasim Lecha, Shalom. May Yahweh bless you and guard you. May Yahweh make his face shed light upon you and be gracious unto you. May Yahweh lift up his face unto you and give you peace. Thank you once again for joining us. And if you stuck around for over an hour and a half on this teaching, kudos for still being here. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you got something out of it. We hope this Shabbat is restful for you, not just for your body, but also for your mind and for your spirit. We hope this next upcoming week is filled with good food, good fortune, good family, good friends, good health, and good spirits. And until we meet again next week, take care of yourself, take care of each other. Shabbat Shalom and Shavua Tov.
Yahweh